Matt, good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So we sent out our agenda, but since we can't vote and things like that, I think we may be best to get a sense from council members in attendance if there were any topics or agenda items we would like to have for community discussion. But just again, as a reminder, things like most of the things on our agenda that we were looking at voting on towards subcommittees and such like that, we're not able to do that today. So if there was any of those topics or other topics that anyone would like to open for community conversation, please let me know.
Guess I can do a reminder that you had mentioned last month, y'all gonna start having a conversation about the the report. It might be some of our discussion be on that.
Yeah, that's great, Michael. Thank you. So yeah, I think there on the annual report, Mariah, were you able to get any sense of a time or if we were up against the time?
I don't think that there's a date associated with when this report needs to be submitted. I did inquire further and did not find like any hard, fast date, but from what I understand, other committees and councils are beginning to work on their annual reports. So I would make the suggestion that that's something we should proceed with as well, and try to submit that as in a timely fashion, I would say.
Thank you. Thanks for checking into that. So typically what we've done is we've had 2 or sometimes 3 of us kind of have a subcommittee, put together the most of the bones and structure of the annual report, and then we send it around to the council for revisions, inclusions that we forgot, and then we send it forward to marketing to make it look aesthetically nicer, right? But I think there, we did the food summit, right? That was a big project. I'm not sure, it's been a tough year, right? So I know the last time that we prepared our annual report, we had information about Liberty Street, but certainly we could do a spotlight on that, follow up more as to how that market has progressed. But any other thoughts or ideas for inclusion in the annual report?
Did we do one last year? 2021?
So we sort of had like a year and a half annual report because of COVID. And so I want to say that I'm about to pull up our last one, called it like the 2020 annual report because it was of that year. But I think that we presented it midway through 21. As I recall, it took us a couple months to kind of get on the agenda. Is that your sense as well, Mariah?
I think that's correct. Again, this was, before my time, but what you're saying, I think sounds accurate.
Yeah, because the 2019 one, which is the one I just did like a little quick Google, or not Google, search on my computer, that one had some of our older projects, right? So that had like the breakfast in class, some of those Think Orange things that we worked on. I've got a hard copy in my office. I don't have it in front of me right now, but we did a second one. We did it 2020, and then just because of kind of COVID disruptions, it covered a year and a half. So certainly Liberty Street was in there. I think also because of the timing, there might have been the Urban Farmers Forum, because that was not in the 2019. So I think those are the 2 main projects we highlighted, as well as the chicken policy, right? Because in the annual report for 2019, we talked about breakfast in class, the vacant lot program, developing community resources, like we did those lists of farmers markets, some work we had done with Habitat for Humanity, with urban agriculture and land, as well as the state and regional policies review, making some recommendations. I would like to find that 2021.
For creating it, is there any parameters that it needs to fall within?
So typically, and it looks like, so typically we follow a similar format. We list our 10 duties, we list our members, we thank our city liaison. And then what we've tended to do is have sort of an activities and accomplishments bullet list. And then depending, so that pre-COVID, we sort of did, here were the conferences that we attended. So, a few of us were attending some regional and statewide conferences, right? There was like the childhood hunger summit, I think, Forsyth Food Works summits and things, right? Site visits, we had a list of the site visits we had done. So that particular year we went to like Brushy Fork, the fairgrounds, farmers market, and then a list of folks who had come to our meetings and given presentations. COVID, I think, has kind of slowed down some of that. So we had less in our last one. I'm going to continue to repeat myself. I want to find it. I haven't found it on the computer. But there and then we give a recommendation. So it's sort of like activities and accomplishments. Did we go to conferences? Did we have presenters at our meeting? And then what are our recommendations? It looks like we presented our annual report last February. Tiffany had sent out, and I'll forward this to Mariah to forward to everyone else. But Tiffany had sent us, it looks like we presented early in February, and Tiffany had sent out late February the link to watch our presentation from that committee that we presented at.
If you get time, if you could forward it, that'd be helpful. I don't remember ever seeing that.
I'm happy to forward that. I think I just received it.
Yeah.
And I think a good place to start for this upcoming report is, sort of where the last one left off. So if it covered through the end of 2020, then starting with early 2021 would be a good measure for this next report. And I think if you're still looking for like a more clear deadline, I think as I've just sitting here listening to you speak, a good measure may be around the end of the fiscal year would be, I think, a good timeline to work with.
Oh, and guess what? The actual the 2020 report is on our website.
Even better.
Yes. So,
That's
sorry,
good.
I have
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So there again, it's very similar to what I talked about: our mission, our purpose, our duties, activities and accomplishments, our members, kind of community presentations and partnerships and next steps. So we do follow a kind of formulaic approach, right? We'll just want to go in and populate those sections with what we've been doing. So maybe a good way to start is we could just get Google Doc or something where we each put in various projects under these headers. If any of us attended presentations or had community presentations, things like that.
Attended presentations on behalf of urban food policy.
Yeah. So I think there we've kind of done like community presentations and partnerships. And so, for example, in 2020, the partnerships that we had listed were Neighborhoods Hands, the Reedsville Farmers Market, Judy Yarborough specifically. She was really helpful in connecting us to the state consortium of smaller farmers markets. So I know I attended those monthly phone meetings for many months leading up to Liberty and through Liberty. And she gave us kind of a lot of, as a smaller market that is through the city, kind of how they work the logistics and management. Beta Verde, in terms of the support that we got from Cobblestone, right? That's our parent company. Forsyth Food Chats, Hope Winston-Salem. So yeah, there was just kind of some partnerships that we had worked with throughout the year. And then we also last year asked the vendors as they wanted to be identified, but we included the vendors in those partnerships. So I know Island Cultures was on there, Earthwood, Happy Food, right? It was a pretty nice list of most of the vendors that were at Liberty Street. And then we usually kind of say next steps or recommendations.
I think this is totally fair, like for us to be going through this, because, you know, since our inception, it's been a lot of getting acclimated, and you know, we didn't have a lot of inertia or momentum going into it. So just kind of building up our, you know, our capacity and our, you know, understanding of our roles. And now, you know, right when we're getting there, it's been a lot of transition and new people coming on. So I think it's good that we're going back through this, you know, with the report and everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Michael. So sounds like when we have quorum and the possibility to vote, you might be interested in being on that subcommittee. I will surely follow up. It's
definitely
not that tedious, right? I think it just sometimes is easier to have only a couple folks writing it and then everyone editing it, you know. I did hear from Jacqueline and she's unable to attend. She sends her regrets. So I think there we will not have quorum this evening, just to kind of put that out there for us. All right, yeah, so the annual report, definitely, right? We'll keep that on in March, but I'll certainly look at kind of getting our Google Doc going. In between, if you have a chance to check out the 2020 annual report, it is on our website. Any other topics that we might want to discuss?
One suggestion on my end. So I know that we do not have quorum and would not be able to make an official vote on the issue, but since we are discussing or it was on our agenda to discuss following our previous meeting last month, the formation of a committee or several subcommittees, I do want to share that I had reached out to the city's attorney to try and clarify some of the differences between subcommittee and ad hoc committee being where you have more community participation. I wasn't able to hear back, unfortunately, from them before our meeting with some of that clarification, but once I do, I'm going to be looking to share that out with this group as well. And if nothing else, we'll have hopefully an update by our March meeting. But I know that not only are we discussing forming a subcommittee for our annual report, but also I know that there was some interest around one for Liberty Street, as well as one for evaluating water access and other challenges that urban growers are facing in our community. And I remember that Brandon and in particular, I think had some questions related to how community participants can interact there. So I just wanted to share that update that I'm still looking to clarify essentially what are the differences between those two type of groups that could be formed under our council.
Thank you, Mariah. Thank you for looking into that. That's helpful. And I know, yeah, I think that opportunity, if the ad hoc is available, allows a bit more of a formalization of a role for community members. But yeah, we did have on our agenda some exciting subcommittees will just have to wait on bated breath for that. As well as, I think something we can do in the intermediary between now and our next meeting is think about that topic that related to water access. How might we collect data, right? Are we thinking about a survey instrument? Are we thinking about like a poll that we could put online and just easily kind of through snowball sampling, send the link out and just collect information, in other words, like rather than us all having, like our council always having to send the survey out, snowball would sort of mean like I sent the link to Michael sent it to a friend or a colleague of his, right? And we can each kind of just pass it forward as it goes along. Versus a more strategic sampling technique, right? But that may be a better way from a grassroots perspective to kind of send it out to as many folks as possible. So think about that survey. What might be the right way to give that survey, right? I always think something like online, it's easy, right? I can send it. Most people have a phone they could click to answer as opposed to filling out paper, and then what kinds of questions we might want to ask and things like
that. One thought that I have had, and in terms of data collection around growers, is I understand that urban growers have to seek permits from the city. And so I wondered if we could contact the permitting office and see if they have information, maps, data that they would be willing to share in terms of our evaluation of reaching out to those growers, because it seems like they're an office that already has essentially that contact, right? And so that might be one direct way to sort of reach, and that might not be a perfect system because I imagine there are a number of growers that are not necessarily going through a permit system if it's more of like a home garden situation rather like I'm actually doing urban agriculture. But I think it would be a good place to start. And I'm not sure who the contact would be, but that's something I could look into and try to share with this council. But I think that if they're willing to share that information, it would be a lot to go through on my own. And so that's something that I think a subcommittee that we could put together would be useful in sorting through that.
So previously, when I've asked for data on permits, I worked with two individuals at the city. So when we did the chicken permit analysis, Donna Beck.
Okay.
She's in inspections division, Donna Beck, B-E-C-K.
Okay.
And Bruce Bailiff.
Do you know what department they were with when you were working with those folks?
And I could send you their emails as well, right?
Okay.
Donna Beck is permit office supervisor in the inspections division.
Inspections.
And I believe Bruce was related to data we wanted on code violations, I think, right? I can't quite find his signature at the end of our emails. But Donna referred me to him, and that was in community development.
Okay. Well, maybe if you have that contact, if you're willing to share with members of this council, I'm not sure if there's someone who is particularly interested in reaching out, but I think that would be a good place to maybe start and gaining some of that information.
Yep, sounds great. I'm gonna send you both of their contacts, and then that way you have them as well, because I just in case it's helpful to you as well, Mariah.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I'm happy to help facilitate a connection. I'm not sure. I know, Michael, you have been wanting to have some of this information or have been vocalizing some interest in doing more research or data collection around the water access issue, so we could try to move forward on that. So if that's something that you're interested in helping to facilitate in terms of this connection, but I think that would be a good place to start, is the permitting office. And I will say, do you know when you were last in contact with them, Megan?
Yeah, so I just sent you and Michael the email addresses, but I echo your offer, Mariah, about perhaps you making the contact. I think it was actually Regina Hall that made the contact. I remember I cold email, I didn't hear back. I'm like, Regina, I haven't heard back. And Regina sent an email saying,
Okay,
I'm introducing you to the person, you know, and so I do think that is quite helpful.
So I
2019. This was
okay.
like October of 2019.
I think, if I'm correct, that I was just informed those two individuals are no longer with the city, but that I can look into see who would be a more appropriate contact, because I'm sure someone has filled the permitting role. And so that I can send a follow-up email to folks with that information and see if we can try to facilitate some sort of information sharing or data sharing about some of the permits given to folks who are doing urban growing in the city.
Yeah, I think Bruce was with, I finally found the thread, Community Development's Project Supervisor for Code Enforcement.
Okay, I'll write that down. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then Donna was the Permit Office Supervisor in the Inspections Division.
Okay.
Under Planning and Development.
Okay. Thank you. But yeah, I think that would be a good place to start in terms of getting some of this information.
Mm-hmm. Well, any other topics or thoughts? I don't want to consume too much of folks' time since it's a meeting we didn't make quorum on.
Guess only question I might ask now is, have anybody heard anything about the when we might return to normal, so-called, or return in person? Or they're still?
So the answer is, in short, no, I'm not exactly sure. The city, in terms of their policy currently, actually has recommended that staff work from home as much as possible. So they sort of have gone back more towards the policy what they had last year. So it they did at one time have us coming into the office more 50%, and now they've said cut that back a little farther still and only come in as necessary. So if that's an indication, I would say it would still be some time, but the policies are always evolving, and I personally am not in a position to really know much about it until it's being shared with me. But once I have information about whether we have guidance to do more in-person meetings, I will certainly share that with folks as well. But my guess would not be anytime soon.
Okay, that's fine. I don't mind staying home. But, yeah, that's just a question I would have to ask.
No, it's great to always be following up. I mean, I have not experienced this council yet in person. I think that would be a wonderful reprieve. I think Megan does a great job leading us through some of our, somewhat awkward Robert's rules of having to do introductions on Zoom and whatnot. But I think in person, I'm sure would be a great way to have more connection around what we're doing as well.
Yeah, it's a bit smoother. The camera adds a few inches of height too. So when we meet in person, don't be surprised that, I'm very toweringly tall. Yeah, no, but I've served as like a faculty parliamentarian and stuff. So I've gotten to read Robert's rules cover to cover. It's a great read. I try, but there, yeah, I do think, just kind of out of respect for time, if we can just maybe kind of, close it unless there's anything good for our community discussion. I'm going to do my best, and my only hope is perhaps members here that might have some connections outside the council with some of our council members. I'm going to try to kind of do an afternoon check-in with folks right before our next meeting, just say like, hey, don't forget 6 o'clock. Because I think we've got some really important stuff on our agendas, getting these subcommittees and ideally the ad hoc committees together and ready to roll, especially some of the topics related to the Liberty Street Market by the time it opens, will just be really great, So I appreciate y'all's time and coming, but I'm optimistic about March and getting quorum.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. And yeah, and I will do my part. Megan let me know this early in our meeting, but I will try to also send the invite as well when I send the agenda minutes. Right now, I've just been sending it over the calendar, but hopefully that just makes the link a little more accessible for folks too. So in case it's ever tricky to find, I'm not always the most tech savvy person. So I hope it's not too confusing that it's sitting in your calendar, but not necessarily your email. So hopefully that can help out a bit.
Yeah, because for some reason my calendar link wouldn't pull to open Zoom. I don't know why. Often it's, but yeah. So
yeah, well, we are learning, myself especially, how technology works sometimes, but we will figure it out. And I'm just glad that y'all were able to be here this afternoon or evening. So thank you guys again for your time.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mariah.
Thank you. We'll
Take
talk
care,
soon.
y'all.
Talk to you soon. Peace.
Thank you.